Welcome to the Nightbird Radio Podcast. I'm Timothy Saylor, and I'm going to be your host this evening as we sound out the subconscious, navigate the nocturnal, and explore the farthest reaches of our experience. Coming at you from the back of an 86 Dodge Ram van on the rolling foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in the Great Forest, deep in the heart of the Kali Yuga. This is radio for the hauntological turn. This episode of the Nightbird Radio Podcast was brought to you by me. If you'd like to support the show and hear your name or a cryptic message in lieu of your name read at the top of the next episode, head to nightbirdpodcast.com and navigate to the Support the Show page. And remember to subscribe to this show wherever you listen to your podcasts and give me a 5-star rating. That helps a lot. I'm also on Instagram at Nightbird Podcast, on YouTube at Nightbird Podcast, and on Telegram at t.me/NightbirdRadio. And welcome back, Nightbirds. It's great to have you back, and it's great to be back. This week I was joined by Gary Noriyuki. Gary is a tattoo artist, a practitioner of conjure, Kimbanda, and the Thai occult, and an all-around cool guy. Gary had some great stories for me. He told me about his first experience working with magic and the results he achieved. He shared with me the story of finding and approaching his first teacher, and he gave some great advice for those looking to do just that. He told stories about working with spirits and mistakes made along the way that led to lessons, and also about the importance of divination practices to navigating progression in spiritual practice. We talked about magical tattoos, goblins, Phra Ngang, the Thai occult, funeral food, land spirits, and so much more. But without further introduction, let's get to the conversation. Gary Noriyuki, welcome to the Nightbird Radio Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. We were just having a little technical difficulties, but we're here good and going now. I was wondering if you wanted to tell the audience just a little bit about yourself so they have some context for the rest of our conversation.
Yeah, I am. I'm an artist for the most part, or at least I like to think that I'm an artist. I'm a tattooist. I've been a tattooist for almost 15 years. I've also been practicing other magical practices such as conjure. I'm a practitioner of Kimbanda as well, and Ocha practitioner. And of course, under Ajarna Pichai, I'm studying Thai occult practices as well.
What were you afraid of as a child?
You know, coming from kind of like the woods and somewhat city, I don't think that I had much other than just like afraid of the dark. But when I was out and about, like I think that I developed a fear towards dogs because I got bitten by a dog with rabies. And I didn't realize that my fears were kind of like about to get kind of like kicked off from that. I had a natural fear for needles as well, which is funny because I'm a tattooist.
Yeah, we're going to come back to that, but continue.
So, long story made short, the dog had rabies, and I tried to hide it for like 3 days. Well, actually, I tried to hide it for the longest, and it only lasted 3 days until my mom found out, and then I had to be taken to get treatment. So I had to face my fears for 2 weeks straight. Getting poked by needles every day sucked.
Yeah, that sounds awful. Interesting. Okay, so I want to dive into that a little bit because this is the reason I asked this question, is that I often find that what we're afraid of as kids, or what we're afraid of in general, like as our life continues on, we sort of begin to have this relationship to that can often be paradoxical, right? Like, for instance, for me, I was really scared of aliens. And I was really scared of being taken in the night. You know what I mean? Like, just that whole idea was just really, really paralyzing for me.
Yeah.
And yet I couldn't stop reading about them, watching shows about them, etc. And so you were afraid of needles, and yet you find yourself being a needle man. Like you work with needles, right?
I know.
So is that, do you think, what do you think is, to me, it seems like that is almost sort of like a remediation or like,
Yeah.
but what do you think? What is your take on that?
Well, as I've come to understand, like the differences between the needles that are used in tattooing versus the needles that are providing a shot or drawing blood, like there's a different depth of penetration that goes into it, like for tattooing, when I started, well, actually, when I went to get my first tattoo, it didn't really like cross my mind to think there's a needle involved. Like I was more thrilled about the experience. Like and the fact that I was doing something that, for the most part, I never really cared for. Because I had no desire to get a tattoo. I had no desire to become a tattooist. It was never a dream. Like it was. I was an artist again. Like for the most part, and it just kind of like landed on my lap. But because I was grown in a country that is had just came out of like a civil war, and a lot of the gangs kind of like got you know powered over the country and stuff like that. Most of the tattoo work that I had seen was not appealing, at all. So going back to the needles, like when I got my first tattoo and I got inspired to want to learn, it just like made me realize during the learning process that it wasn't as deep, like the penetration. And depending on your skill level, like if you know how to maneuver those the turns of the skin or the body and stuff like that, like you can accommodate. And if you know what you're doing, you're not necessarily traumatizing the skin as much versus a needle that is thick and is going to deliver, like a liquid of sorts, into your
Right,
body,
right.
which can cause pain. So I think that a study, as anything goes, like studying and trying to understand something is what helps remediate and, like help you understand that it's not as bad as you think. Um, and kind of like gives you the knowledge that you can overcome certain things. Uh, I think it took about 9 years for me to tattoo myself, like for the most part people begin by tattooing on themselves, and I didn't I didn't start it that way. I had plenty of people that wanted me to like practice on them during my apprenticeship. But yeah, I think that that's pretty much what helped. And
That's,
like you said, it remediated that.
it's interesting to think about the depth because I feel like it, and maybe I'm overanalyzing it, but this is just fun to do, for me at least. Um, the depth where the tattoo, it's a bit more like liminal. It's a bit more on the outskirts, whereas like a syringe is, like you said, like penetrating, invading almost. Like it just, to me, like I have the same sort of aversion to needles. Like
Mhm.
even in my addiction, like this actually probably saved my ass. Like I never did a drug with a needle.
Mhm.
Like luckily. But and as a kid, I would like run out of the room when I had to get shots. Like they would have to have people hold me down.
Yeah.
Um, so there's that, but then there's the tattoo, which is like being at the edge of the forest. Like it's where the skin meets the air. It's a little more um borderland area, right?
Yeah.
And it's like as magical practitioners, like that's interesting to us, right? Like we kind of spend our time in those places. So I
Mhm.
wonder if that has to do with it. Mm, you know. Um so interesting. Okay, so you didn't have the dream of being a tattoo artist. So what made you get your first tattoo?
Oh man. Um, Funny enough, I wanted to be a virologist and study viruses. Um, but obviously life took me in a different route.
Yeah.
And I think that at first, it was wonder, because I had a pretty crazy uprising, especially when I got to America. My relationship with my stepdad was pretty rough. We didn't see eye to eye with many things, so which that led me to become grounded all the time. Um, when I got to high school, um, I actually went with a bad attitude, and the first day I actually made a friend, like, and little did I know that he was going to become my sketchpad, my living sketchpad.
Oh, nice.
But he had seen my sketchbook and he was like, yo, man, like, you know how to draw. Like, that's fucking awesome. I'm sorry.
No, you can cuss as much as you like.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
This is a cussing show. Yeah.
So he's like, that's awesome, man. Like, you should become a tattoo artist. And I was like, oh, hell no. He's like, you don't like tattoos? And I was like, nah. So he suggested that I should watch Miami Ink because it was big then. And of course, because I was grounded, I had no clue what this was. And I didn't want to tell him that I was grounded all the time because it was embarrassing.
Yeah.
So the next chance I got to be around a TV so happens that it was my stepdad's father who was flipping through channels and we were just chit chatting and mid conversation. He stops at the TLC and Miami Ink is playing. And Amy James had just finished a dragon tattoo. And it looked like a painting. So like my head is not registering that what I'm seeing is on someone's body. And the guy gets up and I was like, whoa, that's on someone's back. You can do that on skin. And my desire was like, if you can do that on skin, I want to be able to do that. And
Hell
that's how
yeah.
it all began. Like it was the inspiration of like, I want to be able to do that. Like I know that I can do it on paper. I know I can do it on wood, but I don't know how to do it on skin. And like that's a different medium. It's a living person. Like, and it's something that marks for life. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
responsibilities in there.
Yeah. It's high stakes, right?
Yeah, I think that I find myself interested in things that are kind of like challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a little bit more, like you said, like at stake.
Mhm.
Um, there's something about a tattoo, like a fresh tattoo as well, like that. I mean, obviously it is alive because it's on someone's skin, but like it looks like there's a like that sheen that it has. It's like
Mhm.
there's nothing really else quite like it. I feel like, um, that's really cool. And so what country did you grow up in? You were talking about it.
El Salvador,
Okay,
Central America.
okay. So, have you always been, um, have you always lived a life with spirits, or is that something that came across later? How did that begin? I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
So that was interesting. Like I've mentioned that kind of like got raised in the mountains, and that is partially true because my great grandfather lived in Cerro San Jacinto, which is in Soyapango. And that is not too far from the main volcano. That's where my grandfather, my mother grew up. Like there was no electricity back in their days. Like said, so they seen the land be developed into a city. And my grandfather had some stories that are like very interesting. Like of when he was young, spirits that he had encountered through his life, like mythological creatures like La Siguanaba or what we call Siguawet. Um, Interactions with what seem like people, but then he will turn around and they're gone.
Yeah,
Or like playing as a young kid with his sisters, and then finding that they're like far away from where they're usually, like familiar with. And in the Palo de Amato, they would see like this woman that is like, yo, there's a fire in that direction. I think that's your house. And they don't even know, who this woman was, like, and it was a trickster spirit that was just messing with them. Um, Growing up, because I was living lower, like on the foot of the mountain, I would go to school, and pretty much got involved in the city and stuff like that. But when I would go to the mountains, like just to trail, or I mean to go on the trails and hiking and stuff like that with my uncle or my grandfather to the cafe plantations or the coffee plantations. Um, when I would hear their stories, like it would stir my mind with images and stuff like that. Even though I wasn't there to witness things, like it always made me like kind of like try to open my mind's eye to see certain things. And at some point, this is so funny. At some point, I remember, like I got spooked because in the back of our house, like it was very dark and there was like nothing but banana trees. I saw a figure that kind of looked like Baphomet, but like, because I was young and stuff, I didn't really register that that's what it was, and it spooked the living hell out of me. And that's when I kind of like became a little bit afraid of the dark, as a young child. And I don't really quite remember how I got over the darkness fear, or like as far as like rooms or just like being out in the dark. But like eventually, I think I just grew out of it. Um, I was kind of raised in different beliefs. My mother was Christian for a while, but she also went into study Krishna when I was born, and she said that after doing a couple of tests, they were like, this kid is not really for the Krishna stuff, but like he's gonna be of the world type of deal, which is fine. So I honestly like the world, anyways. Um,
Yeah, hell yeah.
but like I grew up with the love for Christianity, uh, and then at some point I rebelled against it. And my grandfather also was trying to like get me into the Catholic side and get the communion and stuff like that. But that actually never happened. And as I grew up, like into my somewhat teenage years, I started rebelling even more hardcore towards it. And then for the longest, I just didn't really do anything. I think I didn't come around on on the spiritual practices until like I was just above my 19 years old. Here in America. Um, it was out of curiosity and things and stories of my country and stuff like that that kind of like inspire me to look deeper, because I was like, well, I kind of know what everybody says, like from the Christian side and what other people's, like experiences have spoken, but I don't have any experiences of my own. So let me go find out. And that's pretty much what kind of like kicked off, like my path into occult practices.
Nice. Yeah, that need for personal experience is an important topic, I think, for this show too.
Hmm.
Um, because I talk to a lot of people that it's like Christianity is just like the religion of a lot of people as a child because it's like what you get brought up in, and eventually there is like well, okay, like you're trying to tell me that this is possible, but that's not possible. Like I need to go figure this
Exactly.
out, right? Like there's something
Hmm.
more going on, right?
Yeah.
So, um, let me ask you this question. Um, what was the first experience you had with magic where you were like, "Oh shit, this works," and maybe you can broaden that out to be something. It doesn't have to like work in the way you thought. You know what I mean? Like, but what was that
Yeah.
first experience where you were like, "Oh, there's something here"?
All right. So this is way before I found Mama Star, who is the one who directly taught me conjure practice, Um I was actually working as a security guard for this company called Katum Nati. And I think I was working for them for like 3 years and stuff like that. And during this time, or the first year working in there, I just since I had nothing else to do other than just be there and guard the place, make sure that nobody was stealing anything. I started buying all these books, like and just reading and reading and reading and reading. Um, I try to like get my to see what was it that I needed to pursue or what I felt comfortable with. And at first, I thought it was Wicca. Quickly realized that that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
And I kind of like left it alone for a while. I want to say like 3 months maybe. And about the year after, um, I started thinking, I was like, man, maybe I could like try to like move into the warehouses and do something else, like instead of just being a security guard. And it so happens that one of the main guys from Belgium had came over and they were doing a lot of changes and stuff like that. And he came and introduced himself, not in a good way.
Oh yeah.
And he had said that he heard that I wanted to move up. And I was like, yeah, I want to move up on the ladder of what's available. And long story made sure what he offered was not a step up. It was kind of like a step side to the side or below, if anything. And I was like, well, I kind of like want to be in the inside, on the office and stuff like that. I don't want to be outside on the sun, in the rail, because that's pretty much what he offered. And he kind of laughed at me. He's like, "Oh, no, 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 no. If you want a job in the office, that's just not going to happen," which infuriated me. So, like, I didn't act disrespectful to him, but I was just like, let me just think about it. And he went away, and I went home that day. I was pissed. And I went to my bedroom and I saw the stack of books, and I was just gonna like, you know what? I'm just gonna try whatever I feel I need to do. And so, without even opening those books, like I just kind of like remember things that I had read. I made a list of what I wanted, the job that I needed, the job that I wanted, and with my anger, I just fueled it,
Mm.
and I burned it to ash. I put a couple of herbs to it, and I rolled the candle and I lit it, and I was like, "If you work, show me that you work now. This is what I need. This is what I desired. This is what I feel in my heart that I need to show this person that I want what I want, and that he's not gonna stop me." And I lit the candle, and then the next day, it was just like a normal, regular day. Like I wasn't stressed or angry anymore. And by the end of the week, another supervisor shows up in my office outside, and he's like, "Hey, man, I heard that you want to move up. And I've seen that you've been in here for a while. So I was interested on getting somebody into inventory control, into my office. And have you like just go count products and stuff like that? You have a nice office in my area and stuff like that. And I think that we would like to give you the opportunity, instead of like trying to hire someone from the outside," which I couldn't believe, like it's everything that I had asked for, just a few days before. And I was just like looking at him like with kind of like deer in headlights. And I was just like, "Oh, this is actually happening." I was just like, "So what about the payment?" Because I had asked for a specific payment. And he's just like, "Well, what is it that you want?" And I was just like, I told him what I wanted. So let me go talk to some people. And just a few days later, he was like, "All right, man, you're gonna be working under me." And I was just like, "Holy crap, this works!" And that's pretty much what made me want to study even further. I was like, if I can do this, like without guidance, um, to acquire what I want, like I can only imagine what I can do under somebody that teaches. And like that's pretty much what pushed me to seek for a teacher.
Okay, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. So that was just something that you knew like instinctively how to do, or did you hear, you know
I
what I
think
mean?
it
Like how
just
did
kind
you
of
know
like
how to
came
do
from
that?
within.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I had read certain books, like it was basic stuff, like from Dorothy Morrison actually. And I think that it was the craft that I was reading around the time, and again, because I figured out that it was Wicca and it wasn't really something that resonated with me. I was just like, well, take the Wicca out of it, like, and I just followed my heart basically in that situation. Like I followed whatever I felt that I needed to do. Nobody told me to channel anger to that. But I quickly realized that anger was definitely the fuel that I needed for that.
So did anger continue to work as a fuel for you, or was it just kind of in that situation? How did that kind of progress?
He was in that situation. I think that there were a couple of other cases that I had, like had to tap on the anger side because I'm a hothead. I can be a hothead. I'm a Leo all around.
Hell yeah.
But no, like for the most part, I try to keep a cool mind. Like over the years, I have learned that like keeping a cool mind works a lot better. Channeling stuff, like feelings and thoughts, like help even more. In some cases, yeah, I think that the primal side of anger could help. I'm not saying that it's all the time, but in that situation, and that scenario, it did.
Yeah. The reason I'm interested in, and you have like just like you're talking about hot and cool, like that, those are actually like ways that they use to describe certain
Mhm.
practices, right? Or spirits even.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because my experience is a little bit similar. I was reading a bunch, but I was really like an armchair guy, and then like eventually something happened that I needed, and I just went with. I didn't know what I was doing really, but like I was able to intuit what to do. Nightbirds, I hope you've been enjoying the conversation so far, and there's more to come. But first, I have to ask that you support the show. As I'm sure you've noticed, There are no commercials on this show. There are no paywalls. You get everything up front. For there to be free dialogue, I think it must remain uncaged by the interests of advertisers. But Nightbird Radio does cost time and money to make, and your support means I can spend less time delivering pizza and more time doing this. That's a win-win. So that's why Nightbird Radio is a value for value podcast. I hope you found value in this show, but I can't and won't dictate how much. Only you can decide that. But what I can do is invite you to take that value, turn it into a number, and head to nightbirdpodcast.com, navigate to the Support the Show page, and donate. We're also listed on podcastindex.org, which means you're able to send Bitcoin via the Lightning Network using your favorite Podcasting 2.0 apps, which can be found at newpodcastapps.com. I also accept services and dry goods in trade. There are many forms in which value is stored, after all. Email me at tim@nightbirdpodcast.com for more information. Sponsors will get a special mention at the top of the show. Thank you for your generous support. Want to hang out with other Nightbirds and Soapheads? For only $5 a month, you can gain access to the Polytechnic of the Numinauts, a private Discord server for artists, animists, and searchers that brings together the Nightbird Radio and Soapbox podcast communities. Just click the link I've provided in the show notes to get started. Now let's get back to the conversation. What was the experience of searching for a teacher like? How did that come about, and how did you find your teacher?
That's another story.
Well,
I
that's
got
why we're
plenty of
here.
stories like crazy.
Dude, I just want to hear stories, man. That's what we're doing. Like,
Awesome.
yeah.
So this is in Pasadena, Texas, and I was already a tattoo artist. I think I was like 3 years into tattooing now. And like in Texas, it's a little bit difficult to just be a tattooist. So I think I was like, if I remember correctly, I was working just like a regular type of job, during the mornings. I was actually working at a McDonald's during the time as a maintenance guy. And around 2 o'clock, I would go to the tattoo shop, and work at the tattoo shop and stuff like that. So I want to say, while I was trying to experiment with things, I got into it with the boss. Not really like in a bad situation, like it's just she made a choice to want to let me go because I started dating somebody in the shop, and apparently she was trying to treat the shop like he was corporate, which is not something that usually happens. And that's the only reason why she was doing that is because she comes from a corporate background too as well. So she lets me go, and I noticed that my tattoo business starts coming down a little bit, like slows down. And I had heard about Mama Star, and Hoodoo, which is, like my first introduction to it. I was friends with this occult shop, the owner of an occult shop called the Witchery in Galveston. And while I was visiting one time, he was like, "Hey man, have you ever heard of Mama Star?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "You should check out the books. I think that would be more in line with you, than ceremonial magic," because he was a ceremonial practitioner. And I was like, "All right, I'll check it out." And I got curious, and I went and checked out her website. I had no clue what she looked like at all, because there was no pictures on her website and stuff like that. And I was curious about wanting to get a reading. And so I saw that she offered small readings and stuff like that, and I booked it. So when I got on the phone with her, that was like my main concern. I was like, why is it that my business is slowing down some, And she told me right off the bat, like, "Son, someone's talking shit about you. And they're saying that basically you are no longer a tattooist, and this is by just throwing cards. And so like this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna cleanse yourself with this, and I know it's silly, but you're gonna do this, and then you're also gonna start a money pot." That was my introduction to making a coffee money pot. And you're gonna feed it with money every day, and watch, somebody is going to confirm this reading with some information. And yeah, I kind of felt silly because this was completely different than than what I had read on Wicca and stuff like that. And I did it, like I baited myself with some coffee, um, and herbs, and made this thing can, with little people that I had drawn and stuff like that, and prayers, and I was feeding it every day. And business started coming back, and then out of nowhere, the girl that I had tattooed in that tattoo shop, like that I haven't seen in a while, finds me on MySpace because this was the MySpace days.
Oh yeah.
And she books an appointment with me, and so she comes over and gets tattooed. And I was just like, "Hey man, like, what took you so long to find information about me?" She's like, "Well, I went to the tattoo shop that you used to work at, and the lady told me that you had retired, that you're no longer tattooed." And I was like, "Holy shit, there's the confirmation." And so after she left, I wouldn't message Mama Star. I was like, "Mama Star, like this person just confirmed, like what you said, like this is true." And she's like, "Well, I knew that that was gonna be true, like I was the one who gave you the information." I was like, "I want to learn from you, like and stuff like that." And she's like, "Well, I gotta get to know you." And so since I had no clue which way to go about it, I kind of like figured out my way of introducing myself. And so, like, I want to say once a month, I will write paragraph about me and just send it to her without expecting any answer back, like just random things about me. And about a year later, like I told her, I was like, "I know that I've been trying to introduce myself. I've been sending you information about me, and it's been about a year since I asked. So I would like to know where we stand. Like, would like to meet, in person to see if you could take me as a student?" And this must have been like a Friday because or Thursday, because like shortly after she replied to me, it's like, "What are you doing this Saturday?" And I was like, "Holy crap!" I was like, I'm not doing anything." And then she's like, "Well, I'm gonna give you some directions, not my address, but some directions of where to go. And once you get to this spot, call me." And I was like, "This is sounding like an adventure already."
Yeah.
I lived in Galveston by then. So I looked the GPS on the directions that she gave me, and I saw that it was like 45 minutes away from where I live. So I made it a point to make that day, like cleared for anything that I had. And I went and had myself some breakfast and just went on the road and followed those directions until I got to the spot that she told me to go. I had no signal, so I had to like go around waving my phone everywhere, like trying to find a signal. And then finally, I got signal enough to call her and let her know that I was there. And then she told me where to go, and I finally got to her place and stuff like that. And I sat there with her pretty much the whole day, just talking, and talking and talking and talking. And then finally, I want to say like it was sun was coming down, and she's like, "Son, I'm gonna take you under my wing. You have been sitting in my prayer house all day. You obviously belong here. Like otherwise you would have been gone within the first hour, of the day that you got here." So she gifted me the first deck of cards, and she showed me how to read cards that day and how to do a basic cleansing. And I was sent home with that to practice, and that's pretty much what got me introduced into conjure, what is known as hoodoo.
Dude, that's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that as well. Dude, you persisted with that for a year?
Yeah.
That is so impressive, man. And it makes me think, it just inspires me because, there's times when I'll reach out to someone to be on the show and I won't hear anything. And then I
Mhm.
kind of give up. But
Mm,
if I give up, I'm never going to hear anything, right? Like
right.
it's interesting too because I feel like there are certain spirits that are that way too.
Hmm.
Like I kind of like not always. I mean, it just depends on who I'm kind of approaching, but there are some like where I have to kind of keep knocking at the door,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
That's very cool, man. So I had a question while you were talking too, and I lost it.
Oh.
It's cool. It'll come back. I was too enwrapped in that story. So okay, how about this? If anyone out there is looking for a teacher, I know there's like some great advice in that story, But what
Mhm.
advice could you kind of give to people that are searching for something like that? Like people that were where you were at, like,
Mhm.
and maybe they don't know where to go or what to look for or how to do it. What could you say to that?
Mm. Um, Persistence and consistency. I think that are great teachers within themselves already. So if you feel within yourself, if we feel within your heart that you want to pursue something, like take a good look at yourself. Take a good look at yourself and see what inspires you to go that direction. See, where is it? Is it coming from? Is it coming from your head or is it coming from your heart? And based off of that, like if that's what you believe in, push forward. Like we are here because we pushed at the very beginning of our existences in order to become a human being, in order to be born. We had to race. We had to be persistent. We had to push through everybody else aside to become what we are now. So I think that that kind of like goes with it, like be persistent, um, be respectful above all. Because I've seen like scenarios that people, I think, like they want to push through, but they also don't know which way to go about it. And sometimes they come across rude.
Yeah, I could imagine,
um,
right? Like there's a fine line of persistence, but also not being pushy.
yeah. Um, So I think that's pretty much it, like paying attention to yourself and paying attention to what is it that you got going on, like what is it that is inspiring you to push forward. What is it that attracts you, what is it that got you, thinking or inspire you to think this is what I want to like experience, like what is it that you're trying to get out of it? What is that you're trying to learn and what is it that you're trying to gain for your own benefit as well, your own progress.
Very nice. Yeah, that's definitely some stuff I'm going to take to heart too. And so then once you were able to kind of get in with one teacher, it sounds like you've kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like now you have kind of an in to speak to more teachers because I'm assuming that wasn't your last instructor.
Right.
You kind of work on that skill a little bit.
Yeah.
Did you
It's
find that?
funny because I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
It's funny because like I mentioned Dorothy Morrison, like that was my first introduction into occult practices. And I think that also I had picked up a couple of books of Scott Cunningham along the way. And as I got deeper in the practice with Mama Star, and I got deeper in my friendships, like with the owner of the witchery and stuff like that. Um, During this time, I believe I was also messaging Dorothy Morrison just every once in a while, asking questions, and stuff like that. And she would answer back, like it would take some time, but she would answer the email. And I completely appreciate it because it was good advice too as well. And she was no longer practicing Wicca. She does her own stuff. And maybe a year into learning with Mama Star, I had forgotten. I was actually working at a chemical plant around this time. And I was so all the time, in the chemical plants that I had no time to tattoo, like or do anything else. Like I did had my time for the practices and stuff like that. But the time that I had free, I would just kind of like spend it alone, like or try to like relax.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that Dorothy Morrison was gonna come to Galveston, and she was actually staying with my friend, the owner of the witchery. And I received a message from him saying like, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" I was like, "Having dinner, just relaxing for the night." He's like, "So I have Dorothy Morrison over here asking for you by name," and I was just like, "Oh, what is she doing in your place?" He's like, "Well, she's gonna be doing a lecture, in classes this weekend." And I was like, "I'll be there. I'll be there, and I'll go see her, stuff like that." So what impressed me is that she knew who I was, and she knew she knew that I lived in Galveston, and she knew that I was also a student of Mama Star. I didn't really know that they were good friends. And so I went to meet her face to face. That was my first introduction in person with her, and it was so awesome to meet her because like it was my introduction to sorcery in a way. Um, and shortly after that, um, I actually came across what was known as wolf and goat, and that was pretty much kind of like my beginning to Kimbanda because that was one of the leads on that store. Is Kimbanda priest, and then shortly after I started having dreams that I had no clue what they were about, and for whatever reason I felt comfortable with the friendship that I had built with my teacher, now teacher, in Kimbanda. But then we were just friends, and I just started like speaking about my dreams to him. And I guess the stories that I was relating with him, he was like, "Have you considered a consultant?" I was like, "What is that?" Like I had no clue what a consultant was. And so he kind of like gave me an idea of what it was, and I pursued the reading, and the rest is kind of like a long story. So yes, based off of the one teacher, kind of like put me in line with the opportunity to have many others as well.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
one door opening after the other.
Hmm.
I love to hear about it. Um, you don't want to tell that long story?
If we have time.
I mean, we can go to other things too. I've got some other things I definitely want to talk about. Um,
Yeah.
I That's cool to hear about the dream stuff. I find that a lot of the nowadays a lot of what I'm doing is like either there's a seed of it in a dream or like it'll be kind of I'll get a dream message
Hmm.
and then I'll go to cards and then for confirmation and then I'll kind of journey on that and that's been become kind of my progression and
Hmm.
so that's cool to hear. I want to ask kind of a mundane question.
Hmm.
So when you were and this is just of personal interest, when you were kind of working at this chemical plant and
Hmm.
you didn't have time to do your passions, what was your and what was your mindset like? Like how did you situate that um within your life and within your quest? Because and I'm asking this for personal reasons, like I kind of find that sometimes I'll have that happen where I have to kind of pay more attention to these like dude I got to pay my bills and stuff, you know?
Hmm.
And so I do have to like pay more attention to these worldly affairs and maybe I don't have as much time to follow like my passions and sometimes I can get really down about that.
Hmm.
So how do you like just out of your personal experience like how do you navigate those times like
So that kind of goes with something that happened. Remember that job that I was talking about with the chemical plant? I mean, the Katung Nati, the
yeah
warehouses and stuff like that.
yeah
Okay, so as a total, I worked there for 3 years, and it came down to like them firing me because they wanted to like get more personnel that would work for cheaper.
right
So
yeah
they were
that's
bringing people from from Belgium to work there, which is whatever. So a friend of mine actually got me into this small warehouse to work at I want to say kind of like not really making pesticides but bottling pesticides and stuff like that in like hazards.
yeah
And it didn't pay much, but by then I had already like talked to who is my teacher in Kimbanda, and we were like friends. Um, I want to say that he had already kind of like done part of the reading, and it was marked that I had the roads open for what we consider licensa. It's the initiation part. Um, but like I had this condo that I had acquired through magical means in Conjure. Like I had an awesome view from the eighth floor through the whole island. Like I could see the cruise ships coming in, and like people that would come and visit me, they were envious of my place because it was awesome. It was badass. So because I lost that job, like I was, making it. I was still making it, but it was just kind of like paycheck to paycheck. And I had gotten my who's now my ex a patois, a charm, and Kimbanda for bringing money because she was lacking money and stuff like that. But she never engaged it. And every time that I would walk by the little shrine that it had, it would catch my attention. Like my eyes would gravitate towards it. And thought process will come in as like, you should work with it. You should work with it. She's not doing anything with it. You should work with it. So I asked her, I was like, hey, like you're not doing anything with this thing that I got you. Do you mind if I start you working? And she's like, no, go ahead. So I started working it. Um, Again, interaction with spirits outside of my ancestors was very little to no experience. Um, I had read the instructions of it, and I actually promised something from the get go instead of asking, like or learning how to work it. And nothing really happened, so I just kind of like left it alone. And so what the time that I was working in that place, the control solution place, I kept having this question of like, man, there's something I'm doing wrong. Like I'm not progressing, like I'm just there. Like I'm meeting what I need to do, but I'm not progressing from there. And so I had a friend, a diviner, came and check for me. So I was like, look, this is my situation, and I want to have an outsider's perspective, on this, and see maybe there's something that I'm not seeing. Maybe I have fucked up somewhere along the ways. Can you please let me know? And so
Yeah.
she did a divination, and I think she was already in Kimbanda actually. She did a divination, and she said, "You have a spiritual depth in here. Is there something that you have promised that you haven't come through with?" And when she finished saying that, it reminded me of like the promise of a bottle of cachaça to this charm. And I was like, oh yeah, I think I promised this to Patois for an issue. And then she's like, wait, what? You did what? You need to come through with that. Like it's gonna flow better after that. And I was like, okay. And so I needed to look for the river to deliver this promise. And I went and got a bottle of cachaça and I showed it to the little shell, and I was like, look, I got it. Now I'm gonna go look for the river. I need you to get me a job that is gonna be paying me over $1,000 at least weekly and stuff like that. Um, that is gonna be more than enough so that I can save for the things that I want, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I have it in my head to go over it on the weekend, which happens to be like 4th of July weekend around that time, to go to this river. I told my ex, I was like, hey, we're gonna take a little trip to the Trinity River, to go do a thing. She's like, okay. And so that same day, I received a message from one of her friends actually that was kind of like inviting us over to their place, which happens to be kind of like on the way to the Trinity River. So I accepted to go and visit his place and stuff like that and stay over for 4th of July weekend. And so I was like, well, we're headed that way. So like I'll take my bottle of cachaça and the charm and just go to the river. And I did that, like offer the thing and went and met with the friends and stuff like that. And we had a good time. We had a great time. Like I had a bunch of like apple pie moonshine. We celebrated and stuff like that. And then the next day, I was just chilling in there, in his back porch, just observing the swamps because it looked pretty badass. And I used to smoke cigarettes back then, so like I was smoking a cigarette. He comes out, he's like, "Hey, buddy, so what are you doing for work?" And I'm like, just working at this place, Control Solution Center." He's like, "Would you be interested into coming to the chemical plants? I'm a safety, and I can pull you in if you want." And I was like, "What?" And he was just like, "Yeah, I mean, like they're kind of like gonna start you in an entry level though, like." And I was like, "Well, what's the pay for that?" And he was like, "It's $16 an hour." And I was like, "Yes, I would want that." And long story made short, like within the week, I had a job, and I started making all this money and I started saving. and I saved enough to go for my initiation in Kimbanda. So I think that while it makes you feel like, like you are not progressing, it makes you want to push further. And like if you don't see something, maybe it is good to have an outsider's point of view, especially somebody that knows, like some sort of divination system, so that they can kind of like give you an idea of like, hey, maybe like you have done this, you have done that, because that's pretty much what happened in my story. Like, and then after that things started moving. I was able to save for what I needed. um Funny enough, like I needed to take a whole week off so that I could come to New York and get my initiation. And everybody at work, they were like, "There's no way you're gonna have a job whenever you come back." Like, because they don't allow that in here. Blah 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 blah. Even if they talk good, they're just not gonna allow it. So I went and talked to my ancestors, and I was just trusting my spirits. And I went and talked to the main guy, the superintendent, and I told him, like, "Hey, I need to take some time off. Like I gotta take a whole week off. Actually, a week and some days. I'm going to New York for some spiritual practices, and stuff like that." He's like, "Okay, no problem." And I was like, "I just want to make sure that I'm gonna have a job when I get back." He's like, "You'll have a job. I promise to you." And I was like, "Okay." So I left. I did my thing, and I came back, and everybody was spooked because they were like, "You should have been fired." Or so and so, like blah 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 blah. Like they're no longer here. You're like, how the hell? What the hell do you do? Blah blah blah. Like, and I just wouldn't tell them. But it was covering my bases with my ancestors for the most part.
Yeah. Dude, so okay, great. That's a great answer, man. Trust your spirits.
Trust the
And
alliance that you
and
have
you
made
had
with your
a
ancestors.
mission. You had
Yes.
like you, even though like maybe you felt like you weren't progressing, you had your eyes on the prize. It's like, this is
Yeah.
what I've got to do to get
hmm
these things that I want. Um, thank you. That's good stuff. Um, oh man, it happened again where I had a question. And I forgot it. Is it gonna come back? No.
Maybe go back.
You can blame it all on me. Dude, I'm gonna start singing that when I lose a thought. That's a great idea. I love that song. Yeah, I just, I asked that because I'm kind of in that situation right now, man. Like, really. Um,
hmm
but that it's good to hear that, because it helps me kind of remember why I even got the thing in the first place. Like, like, oh yeah, that I got this job so I could save money to do these things.
Yeah.
Um,
It is totally okay to put things on pause, like because you have to live. You have to take care of your living space, you have to take care of your bills, like you have to find that balance of a spirituality and being a human being, like or being a husband or being, like a father. I'm not a father by any means. I have no fucking kids. But like I still have to kind of like split myself into what seems to people, like because like I deal with tattoos, which is the mundane, like because there's a lot of people that I deal with that have no desire for the spiritual practices, and they might get spooked with the things that I have going on. And the people that do want to get involved with the spiritual practices and stuff like that, but like there's this thing that I have to like balance again, like I still have to like pay my bills and do all these other things, like, and I can't really like take away time from one or the other, like I have to continue balance.
yeah, I need to do some of that money stuff you're talking about, man. um, so let's talk a little bit about um magical tattoos.
hmm
Um, maybe how you got into that. Does that tie in with your interest in the Thai occult?
It actually comes back from way before that.
Okay, cool.
Um, Funny enough, Mama Star has suggested it, and that was one of the first teachers that suggested, "Look, son, like since you're already tattooist, you can put magic into someone's skin. You can put juju there to protect them or help them, like acquire a goal, like or push forward with their spirituality. So maybe you should look into that. And I heard it, but I didn't. It didn't really like went through because again, like I had no clue and I didn't know anybody else that would do something like that. So I continued studying, like spiritual practices and stuff like that. And then I started like looking into my culture, and the tattoos, and not just that, but perforations, like such as piercings and stuff like that. And it's cool, like I had some piercings on my own. I only have one now, but I had a couple of piercings on my own that I thought were cool. And when I got into Kimbanda, my teacher, Jesse Hathaway, um, in one of my visits to him, he was just like, I could see you doing the spiritual tattoos. You should like really pursue that, like so that's the second person that has suggested it as well, and I was like, when it was just two people already, I was just like, you know what? That's two people already saying it. So I took his advice, into getting to know a little bit more of the symbols and stuff like that, like and studying that. And before I got into Kimbanda, I had come across someone that sold amulets, and it wasn't the well-known Thai occult. It was actually someone else that who no longer offers that. But I had seen a Phra Ngang or a series of Phra Ngangs that I was like, what is that? It looks like there was a show, a Japanese show that I used to watch that had like the eyes, kind of like aliens and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, it looks like that. Like can't remember the character's name. But he was like a superhero. And I was like, it looks like that. And like, but just with red eyes and stuff like that. And it just like made me think of my childhood when I used to like watch this show of kind of like a robot being, but it wasn't like a robot. He was like a superhero fighting these monsters in Japan and stuff like that. And I was just like, it just looks so awesome. It
Oh,
reminded me of my childhood.
is it Ultraman or what?
Kind of Ultraman. I think I want to say it's Ultraman because he has like a little thing
Yes.
and he has
Yeah,
the
yeah.
eyes, like they're all big, and his suit is like gray with red. Yeah. So like I used to watch that as a kid with my grandfather. So the minute that I saw this thing, I was just like, it looks like that. Holy crap. What is the name of it? And I couldn't even remember the name. And I messaged the person and I was like, can you please put it aside for me? I don't know what it is, but I need to have this, like
Yeah, you
can
just
you
felt the
tell me a little
pull.
bit more? Yeah. And the person didn't really give me that much information other than like, oh, I can help you, like it's kind of like this thing that it comes from this practice from Thailand and stuff like that. Long story made sure I purchased it. And it was big. That's like a huge thing, So I don't think that there was much information back then, So I remember being in the chemical plant with this big old Phra Ngang on my chest, hanging off of my chest, and one of my coworkers was like, "What is that?" Like I see. Did you have something within your shirt? And I was just like, "I'm gonna share this with you, but this is like a magical thing." And he got interested into it, And I worked with that little thing for a little bit, like again, I had no clue what the hell I was doing. And when I got everything that I needed to go for my initiation into Kimbanda, I actually sat down with the prayer gang and I was like, look, I'm gonna put you away or probably give you away because like I need to focus on this new practice now that I'm undertaking. And I figured that at some point I was gonna come back to it, but I needed to focus onto this. And so the one person that had asked me about it, I was just like, hey, will you be interested in having this prangang? And he's like, hell yeah, I want that thing. So I gifted it to him and I pursued Kimbanda. And I want to say maybe 2, 3 years, no, I want to say 3 years ago, I came across Jank's stuff and I was looking on the list and I saw that he had a couple of prangangs and there was one that caught my attention and I went on ahead and purchased it. And so like I got reintroduced again, into it. Somewhere in the middle of that time that I was not involved with the Thai practices, I got curious about the Sakyans. And like I had come across a couple of documentaries and seeing the process made me curious about it. Seeing some possessions that had happened during a couple of ones, like got me even more interested. Um, and I think that I bought anything that I could get my hands on to try to like understand this. But it was interesting.
The reason I'm smiling so wide, man, is I'm just going to interject real quick, is because this is a fundamental difference between someone that's into this stuff and someone that's not, where you saw people getting possessed and you were like, I got to know more about that, as opposed to like, I don't want anything to do with that. I love
Yeah,
it.
I know.
I love it.
I know. I have a different point of view about things and
That's
stuff
great,
like
man.
that. I love.
Yeah, me too. Like when I see church services of people like getting wild like that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a church I want to go to, man. I don't want to stand there and just like sing monotone. Like I want to see where these people are like, you know,
Yeah,
having
holding
shit
snakes.
happen. Yeah.
If
Hell yeah.
anything, what one of my thoughts process is like that they have food because I won't want to be munching onto something while watching this thing.
Well, of course, that's important too. What's the potluck look like?
Yeah, in my
But
home
anyway,
country,
go ahead.
huh?
Go
Oh,
ahead. Go ahead.
there was my wife. Like my partner has heard me talk about this before. But, like, and I know it might sound weird to some people out there, but one of the things that I used to do was kind of like go to the funerals around the area that I grew up with. Like and they always had food. So like my head was like, they have tamales. Let me go eat a tamale and go see the face of the person because everybody looked different, like and the ways of preparing a body over there is a little bit different, because it's like low income. So I like to see the facial expressions of somebody that passed away, especially like the differences. Like I had seen people that committed suicide by poisoning themselves. Like or somebody that just like died because of a mysterious illness. And stuff like that, and their expressions were different. And here I am with like a little sweetbread eating it, and seeing I was like, oh man, this is crazy. And I'm seeing all these other kids with me, because they're there doing the same thing with me. And that's kind of like what I link the funerals with. So like coming to the United States and not necessarily seeing that was weird to me.
Dude, that's a really interesting avenue to go down because I think the relationship with death that we have here is so like restrictive. Like we separate it off so much that like I think when it does come through, it's traumatizing and stuff, right? Like instead of being a normal part of life, this is
Yeah.
something that every one of us is going to do.
Hmm.
Every one of us is going to die. Like we have all that. We all have that in common, from the king to the beggar. And I think that like it's actually really harmful on a societal level not to have, and obviously like in different cultures it's going to be different even in the United States, right? But like the
Yeah.
way I brought up, it's like no, this is a topic that we keep over here. And you know, then I died, and like it came over the wall. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So it's cool to hear about that experience that you had because I think that's actually like I'm almost like, yeah, I wish more people had that experience. Like,
Yeah. I've gone to a couple of funerals over here, but like initially my head goes to like, what do they have for food?
yeah,
And it's not because I'm hungry, like it's just like that's just kind of like what I grew up with. And then the other
yeah,
thing is just kind of like this is boring.
yeah,
Not that like death is like anything that I'm get off of, but
right,
like it's just like people are either, in my experience, like there's the person that is crying their eyes out because they lost someone that they loved. And then there's the person that's like talking about how good they were or whatever. And then there's the other ones that are chat talking and stuff like that. And like there's this mixture of everything that's going on surrounding the person that is there, like we're all there, stuff like that.
yeah,
And if I was to step outside, um, I witnessed this even in my great grandfather's death. Like there were people just fucking playing poker, and gambling outside. I was just kind of like, all right, this is kind of like when Jesus died type of deal. Like they were, you could see them,
oh
like doing the
yeah,
same thing. Like so, to me that doesn't seem weird coming over here to the United States and like being like or handling funerals in a different manner, that's weird to me.
Dude, I'm with you. Huh? Yeah, it's weird to me too. The way we treat it is weird. And I'm from here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, man. Like, I just think, yeah, I'm big on having just a healthy relationship with death. Like, I think that fear of death, it makes people easy to control, and it makes people we have a lot of problems because of this fear of
Yeah.
death. And I was afraid of death too. You know what I mean? Like, I was so afraid of death that when I didn't believe in anything, I couldn't even live like that, man. Like, I had to escape in all these ways. You know what I mean? So that's when I
Yeah.
got into the hard drugs and everything. Because it just didn't. I was fucked up from that. You know, like this idea that there will be nothing, and maybe who fucking knows? You know what I mean? But like, I'm pretty sure there's something going on because I have experience with death now and with the dead.
Yeah.
Um. So yeah, that's a cool story. I appreciate that. I did want to ask. So you mentioned when you had that prangang, you said you didn't know how to work with it, but you did anyway.
Yeah.
What did that look like for you?
Oh man. So like I didn't know that you could give it offerings. Like I didn't know any of that stuff. I had made friends with practitioners of, like follow and stuff like that, or that type of spirituality. And there was this one that apparently had one Phra Ngang himself. And I showed him mine and he's like, "Oh dude, you should give him a Red Bull." And I was like, "A Red Bull? Why?" And he explained, well, Red Bull is made in Thailand, like so I'm sure that he will like that, and I just like, oh crap, and I was like, all right. And but it still kind of like didn't really like made it through in my head, of like why the Red Bull and stuff like that. And then he said, like if you ever need his help, definitely give him a Red Bull and speak to him, like you don't have to like go crazy about it. Just like communicate with him like he's your brother, or like your friend that is right there next to you. Um, and so I ended up getting a ticket and I needed to go to court. And I was low on money. So I remember that. And I was just like sitting in the parking lot for the court. And I was like, you know what? I'll be right back. So I left and I went and got a Red Bull and I went and parked in there, in my car. Opened the Red Bull for him and I was like, all right, Prangang. I don't know. I didn't know kata or anything there because it didn't even come with one. I was like, I need your help. I legit need to either be let go, or pay something minimal, like and like get out of trouble, like but make it the best thing, like the best scenario possible for me. Here's your Red Bull, and after that, like I'll I'll be very thankful to you for anything because I have no clue what to do. And so I left him, in the car with the Red Bull. And like again, this is just by intuition, like not that anybody told me to do that. Because, like going into a court, I don't know if they were gonna search me or anything. And so I left him in there, and I went into the courtroom and when I was in front of the judge, he looked at me up and down, and he was just like, so what happened again? You're like, why do you ended up getting a ticket? And I was just like, well, I was parked in an area that I shouldn't have been parked, I think, if I remember correctly. And I had came over to New York, so like I spent some time in New York, and then I went back, and like I had to go pay the thing, and yeah. And he heard that, and he's just like, "What were you doing in New York?" And I was like, "Well, I'm an artist, like, and I was up there for an art show, and it wasn't true, like I was there for other reasons." And he's like, "Oh, you're an artist." And he looks at me again. He's like, "My daughter is an artist too." Blah blah blah. Like he starts telling me about how she is, doing a medium and stuff like that. And I was like, "Oh, that's cool." Like so I'm just listening. He's like, "You know what?" He's like, "I'll just let you go." And I was just like, "What the fuck?" So, like he turned out to be very cool, even though like I had seen his interactions with the previous people, and I was just like, oh no, man, I think he's gonna be an asshole to me. But no, he was completely cool with me. And he let me go. I didn't ended up, having to pay the ticket. So when I got in the car, I was extremely excited, and I was like, "Thank you, thank you!" Like I was like very vocal about it, like "Thank you so much, Phra Ngang," like blah blah blah. It definitely worked in this. When I got home, I actually got him another Red Bull.
Hell yeah, man. Payment up front and after the deed is done.
Yeah, and so after that, I was just like, "Yes, man, this thing works." Like I have no clue how, but it fucking works.
Hell yeah, dude. So you're getting your first experience with these Thai amulets. How do we then go to you like making amulets? I'm
So
sure it's a long story, but indulge me with what you can.
we're gonna fast forward.
Yeah, that's cool. Fast forward all you need.
Yeah, because that's like years in between, like from when I first interacted with Phra Ngang and then getting into Kimbanda. And now I'm like 7 years, in Kimbanda as a whole. And 3 years practicing, like Thai sorcery, in many forms, because I have, the one from Apichai. But before that, during the pandemic, I made friends with another Ajahn, and he was from the Headless Temple Tiger, and he is in Bangkok. And so during the pandemic, I was curious and I was looking online and stuff like that on Facebook, and I came across Ajahn Woodkong, and I saw pictures of the temple and I just messaged him. I was like, "Hey man, like I really like your pictures and stuff like that, and the amulets that you have, they're pretty awesome and stuff like that." And he started answering back, and I was curious about the coins that he was offering off Rod, because that was the thing that he was working on at the time. And after talking with him and trying to understand the way that he worked, because I assumed that everybody worked the same, but it wasn't the case. Come to find out, he doesn't really work with ghosts or pry. It was more of the putakon, like type of magic, more of the holier side. And so when I would ask questions that had to do with like remains and stuff like that, he would kind of like end the conversation by saying like, "I have a headache. I have a headache. I don't think that I want to talk about this," and stuff like that. And I didn't really quite understand that for a while. So I started showing him designs of, things that I had worked on, like that were conjure based. Like the idea was to come up with tattoo designs or tattoo flash for conjure practitioners with sigil work that I had created. And I showed it to him. And he's just like, "Oh, this is awesome. The rooster, for protection. This is great. Like, yeah, I can see this, how this could work and stuff like that for tattooing." And then I showed him the spider, on the back of it. And he was like, "Yeah, this is great. I also have a spider tattooed on me. This is for business and stuff like that. This is great, great symbol." And so I was like, "Hey, man, like, how would you feel about coming up with a project and blending our practices together?" Like because the conjure side is very similar to what you practice. Like you obviously don't talk about remains and stuff like that. And that's when he took the opportunity to tell me, he's like, "Look, the only reason why I don't do that is because me being a priest, I had to obtain certain things, and one of those things is kind of like animated by one spirit. And because of the process that he had to go, when you start talking about spirits with him, like the one spirit comes to his head and like it starts messing with him." So it's like, okay, that makes more sense. Like so obviously, like I stopped my talks with, the whole human remains and stuff like that. And I got curious, like on the way that he worked things, in channeling, energies, or the elements or planetary forces, into amulets and stuff like that. And we came with the plan to create those coins, and I pursued the work, like actually worked my ass off, put all the money for it. And I was keeping track of the process and stuff like that. And, it was very interesting because he would take it to his temple, to the lineage temple, have it blessed over there, and then come back and send me pictures of, like the process and stuff like that. And I was just like very, very, I want to say inspired because of it, like which led me to want to seek further understanding in astrology, to a level because conjure doesn't necessarily work with, the stars and stuff like that. It's just kind of like the spirits of the dead, some saints and force around you. um, from the pandemic lockdown, like he started getting busy with his business and that kind of like made me wonder, well, like, yeah, the holy magic is fine, but my desire of what to learn, like my intrigue, I guess, was, the necromancy side. And I had heard about Ajahn Apichai, during this time, and I was curious about it. I was curious about the way that he worked and stuff. And I came across one of his amulets, which happens to be the one of Baphomet. And I friended him. And it took me a little while to like message him because I didn't want it to like just go and attack, be like, hey, like have all these questions and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But eventually I ended up messaging him and introducing myself, like in a respectful manner. And with the idea of like maybe he's never gonna answer, like maybe he's never gonna see it. I don't know how busy he is and stuff like that. And to my surprise, a couple of days later, I received a message back from him, and in my questions about the Baphomet amulet. And that's pretty much what began our relationship or friendship, as first as friends, and then as pursuing teachings from him. So that's kind of like what paved that.
Yeah. Cool. I love to hear about it. Talk a little bit about and by the way, people can buy your this coin that you talked about, the Rooster Spider coin,
Yes.
on your
Mm-hmm.
Etsy shop.
Manticoresden.com is my website. And I also have Manticore's Den Conjure on Etsy.
Cool. And you sell oils and amulets and
Yes,
all
I
that cool stuff.
sell oils and amulets that I have made based on just conjure practices. And then there's the blends that Kajarn and I make, or things that I have blended based on the teachings that I have gathered from Ajahn Apichai and Wukong Mong along the way.
And so one of the things that you have on there um is Magos Key,
Yeah.
which okay, I do want to talk about goblins some, man, because I know that we've been talking a little bit about goblins. And
Hmm.
I'd mentioned to you that like I've just always been interested in goblins, man. I just ever since I was a kid, I was just fascinated by them. And it's interesting too to think about when I was talking about like I was kind of afraid as a kid of being taken in the night or like being abducted by aliens. It's like this very goblin sort of feeling to it. There's like a fairy thing going on there, right? Because like
Hmm.
those worlds are kind of adjacent, right? Like they both kind of take you away
Yep.
and change you and bring you back.
Hmm.
Um, but let's try to maybe start at the beginning of what got you into working with this particular current or goblins in particular.
Sure. Well, before I was introduced to it, like again with the wolf and goat, um, I grew up in El Salvador, and there's a lot of like mythology. There's a lot of like what we call leyendas, stories that are kind of like cultural. So the being that I mentioned earlier, Siguanaba, Siwewet, she's actually Siwewet means beautiful woman. And it's the story of a woman that was cursed by the god Tlaloc because she ended up killing Tlaloc's son. And because she wanted all the richness for herself. She was legit the most beautiful woman known, in the culture. And because of this beauty and her using it in a bad way to gain benefit off of it, and going out with someone else, she ended up getting pregnant. Well, she had a sorcerer kill the son of Tlaloc. Tlaloc finds out. Tlaloc is the thunder god, um, rain god, and he finds out. So he curses Siwewe to become Siwanava, which means a hag woman. And the curse was basically that she would be seen beautiful from far away and lure men. But once men got close enough, like she would turn into a hag and take you to the underworld. Whether it is by a river, because she lives by a river, or just like at the edges of the woods. The kid that she was pregnant with got also cursed, and that became known as Cipitillo. And Cipitillo, the description of Cipitillo is like that of a young little kid with a big old hat, big hat. He's very skinny and big old belly and long nose, and his feet are backwards. So that's a goblin already,
Yeah, yeah.
So I
And
grew up
also
with the
similar to
stories.
like an alien description too,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like, yeah.
So I grew up with the stories of goblins and stuff like that in a way, by mythology, knowing that that was a goblin already on its own, and learning remedial ways to get rid of it. Like even though I'm not a woman, like. But the thing is with the Cipitillo is that he lives by the river and he is fascinated with beautiful women. So like there's stories of women that will go to the river to wash their clothing and then they'll feel like a little pebble being thrown at them and like sounds of someone following her and stuff like that. And basically this becomes like a parasitic type of like entity that is like around this person. And in order to get rid of it, you have to do things that are nasty so that the goblin or, creature would go away on its own because now it would be like, oh, you're so disgusting. So that was kind of like in my head as growing up. And now fast forwarding to the wolf and goat, like wolf and goat was a new thing, like I had come across the website and the store by accident around the time that my grandfather had passed away in a tragic manner. And with my little understanding of, like death and the way that my grandfather had died kind of like made me curious to think maybe, like my grandfather's soul might have been stuck in the area where he died because he got run over. He didn't. Whenever they did his autopsy, they said that there was no sense of pressure of this boss running him over. Like that he was just dead in contact. So because of that, I pursued a product, but I didn't know what, in Wolf and Goat, and they offered they offer a way of elevating the soul. And based off of that, I actually purchased a couple of things. But during the time, I saw that they were also releasing these goblins, that they had, because one of the store members was making them, stuff like that. And one of them caught my attention like right away, which is the one that you have seen.
Yeah.
Um, there was no information about goblins, and of course, that just became an obsession, kind of, like overnight, because I was just like, I want to know more about it, and I ended up purchasing the one, and I didn't get them until like I came up to New York because like I was obviously busy, and so obviously they were busy as well with many things. Um, with that, before I got to New York for my initiation, those dreams that I had mentioned, that I had related to my teacher, there was one of them that had seen this being, which was really weird. It looked like a chimera, because it was like a mixture of what I would describe as an armadillo and raccoon, but it had three legs on each side. And it came from out of these bushes, and I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, you're here!" Like I knew it, in my dream. Oh, you're here. How about you get close to me so that I can have you next to me? And this thing comes out of the bushes, like and crawls like right next to me, and it coils up like a cat. So now looking back, I think that that was the goblin that the introduction of a spirit goblin coming to me because like part of it is that I have it in my bloodline, like through culture, not knowing that the mythological creature that I had learned about was actually a goblin. the deformities that it shows and stuff like that. The physical vessel of the goblin that I have, like is one thing, but during journeys, I have seen many, many things that are completely like mixtures of other things. But the eyes is the thing that is very prominent. It's very alien-like, which is why the Magos painting kind of like became like that. Like I had created that after a mushroom trip with the assistance of that goblin and making a couple of oils from that trip as well. So yeah, that's kind of like what kicked it off for me, like, and put me back into an alignment of like want to know more on the goblins, on like magical practices that are European and the magical practices of Central America, and looking back in my roots.
Okay, so that's interesting. What were some of the similarities between the European traditions and the Central American traditions in terms of goblins? Like, did you find some crossover there or things that were interestingly similar?
Some things are similar for sure. Like in from my cultural background, like I can see them, like for the most part being in the woods, like in my home country is believed that they're in the woods, that they're the guardians of nature and stuff like that. But there's also the belief that some of them live within your house as well, or the land that you have erected a house, and stuff like that, because it is an ancestor of the land in its own way. Um, with the European side, like the hobgoblins that live within the houses and stuff like that, like, or beings that you can come across in caves, um, remote areas that are hard to live in, like feeling that weirdness of like something is watching you, something is definitely there, like or being out in the fog of like the mist in the mornings, like where you can see clearly what's going on, but you can kind of see something moving and you don't know what it is. Could it be a cat? Could it be something else?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the crosses over that I've seen, like in between the two practices.
Yeah, there's something that's really fascinating to me about that because so the Appalachian Mountains
Hmm.
back when it was Pangea, when like when Europe and the North America were like kind of smashed together.
Hmm.
The Appalachian Mountains were actually connected to I think it's a mountain range that's like some of it is in Scotland and some of it is in maybe like Eastern Europe, like Russia area, but that all used to be kind of one. And then, as the continents kind of spread out, they drifted apart. But it's really interesting because in the Appalachians, it's like goblin country or troll country or something like they're,
Hmm.
and it's interesting because it's like, well, I've never been to Europe, but I can tell that whatever it is they're talking about, it's very
Hmm.
similar to what is going on here. And the imagery, you even have it, right? Like in
Hmm.
some of the folklore and in some of the knickknacks, like there are, I think up your way, they have puckwudgies.
Hmm.
Yeah, which is kind of a similar thing. It's like this little pot bellied trickster that like kind of calls you and tricks you to jump off a cliff or something, right?
Yep.
And I just love seeing those kind of, and then so in Thailand you have Phra Ngang, which you kind of have mentioned to me is sort of like a goblin too. It's
Hmm.
like a Thai
Yeah.
goblin.
It's definitely like the sort of Thai goblin, like, because in a way it is fiery. Uh, if we look back into the history of witchcraft and stuff like that, like what would be considered a little devil could be a goblin, you know.
Right, an imp is very goblinish.
Yes, exactly. So it is not hard to see Prangang, this being with these red eyes that looks like a dark mist, who likes to smoke and loves sex and loves desire and all of this stuff. Sounds very devilish already.
Yeah,
And him being, a certain height, and stuff like that, and the possibility to lure you whichever way your heart wants to go. Like, so if you want to go do things, yeah, yes, I'll support you. Do whatever, just do it. Or if you want to do bad things, like etc. Like it will take you that way, or good things, whatever, back and forth. So I think that based off of that and the interactions that I have with Apichai and the way that we have spoken about him, like it was kind of like easy for me to narrow it down to like this is kind of like a goblin, like this. Even though like the stories out there, like there's many versions of like how Phra Ngang became a thing, but nobody really can put a finger on how it really became a thing.
Yeah, from what I've read, it's very mysterious. There's just kind of like that
Hmm.
air of mystery is almost like it's part of the deal, right? Like the mystery is the point.
Yes.
And there are
Yeah,
certain spirits like that.
exactly. Like you just reminded me of something. So remember how I was telling about the goblin and had gotten initiated in Kimbanda and I was still living in Galveston and stuff like that. So I took my original goblin, the first one and only that I have, back home. And again, like I had little to no information on how to deal with this thing. And I was just only advised to like just sit down and talk to him. Sit down and quiet your head. So I would experiment with that. And then I took a trip for a month, to come to New York again, Connecticut, New York, stay and visit my tata and try to learn through him and stuff like that. When I went back, actually, midway on that trip, my ex came up as well, so she took 2 weeks to come up. And so my house or my condo was alone, for that time period. When we went both back to my place, and had all the luggage and stuff like that, I opened the door to my condo, and as soon as I walk in, I seen the shadow mist, which I thought was a cat, like a black cat, jump from the counter, not like a jump, but it was like a glide, and it knocked some of the plates that were sitting on the dish rack. And I thought it was the black cat that we had, and I was like, God dang it, Nooks, because that was her name. And where this thing supposedly landed, I heard nothing, no thump. And then I looked over to the direction of my bedroom, and I see the cat just laying in there, and I was like, I had the hairs on the back of my neck go, and I was like,
Yeah.
holy fuck, that was the goblin. And then my ex was like, where the fuck did Nooks go? And I was like, you seen that too? And then she's like, holy shit, she's laying over there. And then she's like, what the fuck was that? And I was like, that was the goblin. And obviously was fucking hungry looking for something in the kitchen.
Yeah, they love to eat,
So
man.
me and my ex, who's my ex wasn't really that involved, was able to see that. Like there's two witnesses right there
Yeah.
who saw the physical manifestation as a dark mist. Funny enough, during the day. It wasn't even at night. During the day, we seen that. Um, and ever since then, like I've seen my goblin, like in every place that I go, like of course he's I always have his own space. But my current cat plays with him, like he has followed him, like or the goblin just comes out and he glides in between the rooms, like and my cat could be just laying down or over on the other side of the fucking room and I see this other thing, like that it's just like creeping from one side to the other, like and coming to see what the hell I'm doing. Yes.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the time that this is what hauntings are. Like land spirits, house spirits, that you're talking about the hobgoblins, that live in the houses. And I
Mhm.
just think that you call them a ghost or something. Oh, I have a poltergeist or a ghost, but like a
Mhm.
lot of that activity kind of sounds like mischievous tricksters, land spirits, like
Mhm.
it just has me wondering, if more people kind of gave offerings to these beings and kind of because I okay, so I've told the story a bunch, so I'm not going to go into it. But my like coming back to um a spiritual view of life, you
Mhm.
know, um, it really was kickstarted by living in a haunted house.
Mhm.
This was definitely like a ghost. I don't think. I mean, I don't know. There might be some. I think a lot of the time there's kind of a lot going on in these
Mhm.
situations, right? Because there was like residual energy from a suicide in this place. And
Mhm.
then there was like definitely something that was feeding on that residual energy of that darkness, and then like we weren't in a good place, like me and my ex, like that were living there, were not in a good place. So like that was feeding into it. So
Yeah,
there's like
feeding it. Yeah.
stacked stuff, right? But that experience, dude, I couldn't deny it. So it was like those things where like you're talking about where like I saw it and my wife at the time saw it.
Hmm.
Like, and we both were like, whoa, or like,
Yep.
things would happen or sounds would happen and we would have these crazy dreams. And it's like that was a scary thing to go through, but it actually brought me back to believing that there was something else going on. You know what I mean? Like, and it kind of opened that door for me. So now I can like look at that thing and be like, thanks, dude. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
And so I wonder, like, anyone that's listening that has, weird things going on in their house, maybe you should just try to like hang out with it and see.
Yeah, it depends, I think.
Totally. I wouldn't necessarily want to hang out with the thing that was in my house. That thing
Yeah,
was,
well,
yeah.
there is a being that lives in my house, and it's actually somebody that passed away here. But like at first, I wasn't gonna touch too much on it, because at first I didn't know what it was, and I was just like, well, if you start giving it attention, it's gonna be here all the time, wanting to get your attention all the time. And then come to find out, I learned who it was, and then I was just like, oh, well, like I don't feel as bad anymore, trying to say
Yeah.
something to her, like, or at least giving her, a candle or water every once in a while, or at least acknowledging that she's here. But the times that I'll be doing like either divination and stuff like that, and she has come into my office, I'm like, hey, Baphomet, I don't need that. I don't need that right now. Can you like send her out? Like send her somewhere else,
Yeah. There's definitely, yes. Let me also qualify what I've just said by saying that there definitely needs to be some sort of, there's a hierarchy, there's an order. Like these things should not be pushing us around. So
Yeah.
if, and also like, I think that whatever was going on at the house that I lived in that I was talking about, it was like draining our energy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I lived in a place like that too, as well, here in Connecticut.
yeah.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was weird because there's a lot of maintenance, a lot of cleaning, and a lot of dreams. But also, like I think that it would inspire a type of like tension, even though everything was already taken care of, like the house was already so old, like, and the landlord really wasn't taking care of it. So like it had a lot to do with that. And during one of the trips with the goblin, one of the beings that I came in contact with was like, so there is issues with your land. Like you have to give these offerings, like, and I was shown what to do, which I ended up doing it. But the other neighbors that lived above me, like their kids were being little assholes. They would go out into the patio and literally peel the bark of trees, like, and just that was
Yeah.
like their playtime. And I was just like, yo, that's fucked up. Actually, my current partner went over there and was like, hey, that's so messed up. You shouldn't be doing that. Would you like to be like skin? The kid
Yeah.
was like,
Right.
the tree feels, like, and the kid couldn't wrap his head around this.
Well, I
You know?
think that's why there's so much of that. Like, I think that the reason why a lot of this land is so haunted, and obviously there's a lot of reasons because a lot of the land is stolen, etc. Right? But like, is that we're not in relationship with these spirits. Like we like our society, by and large, in the mainstream, does not accept that idea. So like those kids, for them to hear that like this tree is alive and can feel was like crazy to them, right?
Hmm.
And you know, just seeing it a different way opens up these other avenues, these other possibilities. Like it's changed my life personally. You know what I mean? Like the idea of like treating the land like a being, treating rivers like a being, treating trees like a being, treating things with respect. Because that's just not how I grew up. I grew up that humans have supremacy over everything and we're here to dominate everything. Like that's what my Christianity taught me. You know what I mean? Like, um, I know people interpret the Bible that way. I don't even necessarily think that that's what it's saying, but that book's also been so edited over
Yep.
thousands of years that who knows what the original intention was. Um, and so we live on this haunted country, right? And we wonder why. Uh, even as we do things like tear down trees and et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I mean, nobody would like to have their home come and tore down and then build something new completely all over it. Like,
Right.
what the hell?
Yeah. It's yeah, and there's so much of that going on. Like here, dude, I grew up around here where I'm staying right now. And
Mhm.
it's just north of Atlanta. And when I was in high school or whatever, like, dude, it was just so much of it was just forest, just trees, trees, trees. And even it still is. I mean, compared to a lot of places, there's still more trees here than other places, right? But
Mhm.
like they're just it's just it's all being in the process of being torn down and turned into like not even like subdivisions anymore. It's like these ugly apartment buildings and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just like it's I guess this is where we are in the timeline, right? Like this is what's going on now. But I try to kind of like go into vision and see the land below all that. Because there's almost sort of like this we put this overlay on things where like it's hard not to see like the fucking Wendy's and the parking lot, but beneath that there's the land, right? Like, but
Hmm.
it's almost like this kind of I describe it as it's kind of like the Matrix, where like there's this there's something over my eyes that's not letting me see what's really below, and all that
Yeah.
stuff is still there,
Hmm.
but I just kind of have to pull back and remember it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I lived in Deer Park, Texas for a little bit, and part of the areas of Deer Park was like woods, and it had like little lakes here and there and stuff like that. And I remember seeing it being torn down and then seeing just like a whole warehouse being built on top of that. And I was just kind of like, what the fuck? Like it was mind blowing to me because
Yeah,
when I used to drive down those roads, by the woods, like it was easy for me to see a coyote, just come out and just chill out there by the side of the road, just like just looking out and stuff like that. And now that's gone.
yeah,
All of that wildlife is gone because like for the benefit of whatever the hell warehouse and companies now in
right.
there.
Yeah, the woods that I used to play in as a kid were torn down and they built a Target there. And that Target is now closed. Like it's not even fucking doing anything. It's just a building.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it's like, damn man, like I had fantasy adventures in that place. Like that was my like fucking that was like my goblin world. You know what I mean? Like that was that. Like we went out there and we pretended that we had our make believe there. And so
Hmm.
that is fairy, like that, right? Like and it's just one day it'll be forest again and I'm cool with that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I think.
Oh yeah.
Or maybe it'll be something else. You know what I mean? Who knows? Could be ocean for all I know.
True.
Yeah. This place used to be. So where I'm at, there's a thing called the fall line,
Hmm.
and it's like middle Georgia. And so like Florida, used to be like a coral reef or whatever.
Mm.
Or it is still, right? Like, the under the rock and dirt and everything, there's like shells. But through Georgia, it goes right through the middle of Georgia is the fall line, and that's like an ancient coast.
Yeah.
So it's cool to think about all the things this place has been before. And that's kind of what I think about to make me feel better about what's going on. It's like, well, this stuff has been around for a lot longer than Target.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Oh
you know?
yeah. Yeah, definitely. And they will be here after us. Hmm.
Anything else that you want to mention?
Um, well, for right now, I have a couple of projects that Ajaran and I are kind of like putting together, and it's still in the works and stuff like that. But whenever it is released, of course, I'm gonna write about it, and then probably, we could come up on the show and talk about them.
Hell yeah.
I'm still trying to blend conjure, with some of his stuff. So some of the stuff that I have posted in my Manticore's Den site or Instagram, like I kind of like works on the progress, like I still um so kind of like excited to come up with like the end product, so that I can actually talk about it and showcase it.
Yeah.
But other than that, like I do offer ceremonial tattooing, and I kind of do it after hours from regular tattooing just because it is better, it's more personal, more, one on one. Because there is a certain process that has to undergo type of cleansing, offerings, and prayers that are said. Um, and of course, like some incense, and a lot of people are they're like, "Oh, we don't want the smoke." Or like, what
Which
the
is
hell's
just a
going on over
shame,
there?
man. Which is a
Yeah.
shame, man.
Or
Because
what's
that's
going on over there? They have a candle going on. Why is that guy like murmuring some stuff? And even though I'm not being loud or anything like that, like, but it is just a thing that some people don't really like to see, I guess.
yeah.
But that is definitely available for whoever wants to get a ceremonial tattoo.
And they can
Whether it is
contact you through your website for that.
yes, whether it is the Manticore's Den Instagram or messaging me through Etsy, whichever one is convenient. I kind of like go with a short interview process. Kind of like have an idea of like where you are with your practice. What is it that you're trying to gain out of it? Like if that's the case, or if you're just wanting to honor, like either a deity, your ancestors, your practices, etc., etc. I'll try to like accommodate to the best of my abilities. Like I'm not a no by any means, no, or no, like what it tells into other practices, but like I try to like at least access things through the ancestors, through the dead.
Hell yeah.
So yeah.
Cool, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me, dude. I had a great time talking to you.
Awesome. I had a great time as well.
Yeah, thank you for all those great stories, man. I sometimes it's actually hard to get people to share stories, and I'm just really glad that you were able to just fire those off, dude, because that's what this was about, man. This is about people telling their stories and just letting them know we're out here, man.
Yeah. Experience, like actual experiences, personal experiences, I think are very important, as you mentioned too. Like that's where my belief is, like you can listen to someone's story, but ultimately you have to, like kind of like go and try things out and see what works for you. Like there is models of like beginning things, like, but ultimately I cannot say this is what's gonna work for you, or like this
Right.
is what is the thing, like no, you just kind of like have to try it out yourself.
Yeah, and I can read a lot in a book, and like I've definitely had, crazy experiences with things I've read in books, but
Hmm.
I find that more often than not, um, the book can kind of point me in the direction, but it's my experience that that's really where that gnosis comes through is someone telling me something is one thing, but like you said, um I have to experience it. And like, dude, I'm so hard-headed that like it's probably gonna have to be that way anyway. Like like someone will tell me something over and over and over again, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man, I don't know about that, I don't know about that. And then it happens to me and I'm like, oh, all those people were right, dude.
Yeah, it's happened to me. I mean, like by no means, like it was just like again, some things I had to kind of like experience. The whole goblin thing. That was just kept trying and trying and trying. At first I feeling like I was going nowhere. Until I started actually paying attention to the things that were happening around. So yeah, persistence for sure. Persistence and experience definitely gonna be good teachers.
Yeah, and paying attention, using that awareness.
Hmm.
Hell yeah, man. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on here, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, man.
Thank you
And we'll
so
talk to you
much. You as
soon.
well. Awesome.
Do you experience weird shit? Do your parents not like to tell their friends about what you do in the woods? Do you make more friends in a graveyard than you do at a party populated by living humans? Do you have interactions with beings that are not strictly considered human? Do other people look at you like you're crazy when you mention talking to trees in casual conversation? If you fist pumped or even just answered yes to any of these questions, you may be a nightbird. So let's sing together. If you'd like to come on the show and flap your gums with me, share your stories, or just talk about the malleable nature of reality for a while, then send me an email at tim@nightbirdpodcast.com. That's tim@nightbirdpodcast.com. I'd love to have you on the show. But until then, I gotta fly. But before I go, let me say this. Remember, you are never alone. I believe you.